So what we're going to talk about this week and probably over the next 30 minutes is really the value of hiring a former cruise ship crew member. And last week we talked about the importance of you being able to identify what your transferable skills are. You being able to identify what your transferable skills are. So if you didn't listen to last week, please go on YouTube. It's posted on there and listen to it. So being able to identify what your skills are that you can communicate to potential employers, effectively communicating those skills, and then targeting your job search and utilizing AI to target that job search to make sure that you're presenting yourself in the right light to potential employers. So really it's about identifying the skills, communicating those skills, and identifying what jobs will be the right fit for you. So those are kind of the three pillars. And today we're going to build off what we talked about as kind of the foundation to the house. Now you guys are looking at choosing paint colors, choosing furniture, building the house. So really truly for us is that this is looking at strategies and deeper insights of how you apply this in a way that is tactical into your job search, okay? And so the first thing is showcasing unique skill set. So we said, all right, you're going to identify your skills, but we want to understand how you showcase how they are different from other individuals who are out there in the job search. So working on board a cruise ship can really, really benefit you when you're looking for a job, or it can really, really hurt you. Because, and I think we talked about the stats last time, so few people in the United States, and then when you look globally into your countries, is so few people, if we look at Mapule in South Africa, have actually cruised. And people have this misconception on what cruising is and what crew members do. And so I think that they have two misconceptions that I hear most clearly. Is one is that they're thinking that it's like this horrific, slave labor type of work. And then the second, the other extreme, they think that you're running around the ship, getting to use the guest pool, getting to eat in the dining room, hobnobbing. I would like the movie Titanic. They think that like the crew members are like sitting and having dinner in the main dining room with guests, which we know is not reality. So you have two extremes of what people believe cruising to be. So when you start to drill down into what your position it was on board, is that you have to make sure that you identify what was unique and differentiating about what you learned on board a ship. And some of the most simple things, and you guys will probably overlook them, that makes you different and unique. And when I look at some resumes that come through our recruitment site, is I see really generic terms of what anybody could do. Be like effective communicator. Well, your neighbor that lives 3 doors down could say that he's an effective communicator. You have the ability to have international etiquette. I like that word, international etiquette. And you can tell a story of how you had international etiquette. So this is where it shifts as a manager, as a leader. Your guests are one nationality generally. You're dealing with US-based guests or European guests. But when you explain to a potential employer your international etiquette as a manager, that you understand different religions, you understand different languages, you understand different belief systems, different styles of work, and you can give examples of difficult situations when somebody either didn't speak English fluently on your team and you had to communicate. Christian, did you have a story that you were going to share?
No, I was just going to add culture, accents, ideology. As basic as accents, right? Like when you first join a ship, you can't really understand half of the crew members. And once you leave, like there's so many accents that your ears open up to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Value them.
So true.
You value them, right?
So true. And I'm going to pick on Wilhelmina for a minute, because anybody who worked on a ship, you guys, we have a decent amount of Filipino team members on board or on across our companies. And one of the things that we learned, from ships culturally is that, the Filipino culture is very agreeable and they're very kind and they're very polite. And yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, da, 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 da. And so Wilhelmina, not so much. No, I'm kidding. Wilhelmina is very polite. But one of the things that we always talk about really openly and honestly is we said, you guys, you add value to our company when you say what you feel, when you're really honest with how we're doing, and that's breaking a cultural barrier for them. But why do we know and understand that? Because of our shipboard experience. Every single culture has some uniqueness to them that taught you and helps you understand. So the more that you're able to communicate that in an interview and give examples of it, then you're able to have an advantage. And especially if you're applying for a job that is dealing with people from different nationalities, different cultures, and you being able to tighten that talk track to say, hey, I learned the difference of how to work with somebody from India, from Philippines, from Eastern Europe, from the UK, as a manager and an employee relationship, and also a guest relationship, is that I don't know your ship careers. In my ship careers, I worked with Spanish guests, but not only Latin American Spanish guests, but Spain Spanish, and not only Spain Spanish, but Catalan. And then you understand the difference between a Portuguese and a Brazilian. You understand that. So being able to add that diversity is something that I find that crew very, very much tend to overlook. So make sure that your international etiquette is something that you have examples buttoned up for. The next one is crisis management. If you're able to put crisis management onto your resume and have specific examples of times when you dealt with crises. So when I was shipboard, I was at one, like in the very, very beginning, I was a social hostess. And so I was in charge of when a guest passed away, having to deal with that with their spouse or with whoever they were traveling with. For me, that's crisis management. There's not a lot of people in this world that get to tell that story. So you need to think about in your ship experience when you dealt with crises, and crisis could be a death on board. It could be, I talked about the fisherman strike before, you guys, is that when there was a massive thing that was outside of your control, weather conditions, fog in Galveston, if anybody's been in fog in Galveston, with mental health issues with crew members that were on your team. And it doesn't matter if you were a manager or not. Even if you were a peer, the fact that you got to have that intimacy in a relationship and you can communicate your story and say, hey, I was working, and this is the type of situation that I had to live through. And this is how I dealt with it in a way. This is how my company taught me to deal with it. Those are really powerful things that you can take those skill sets and layer that onto an organization that maybe doesn't have as sophisticated of a crisis management process as what a cruise line already does. So just think about in a health outbreak, OPP, whatever you call it, norovirus outbreak, whatever it was. Think about what you learned in processes and skills and standards and what you had to execute against that you could bring to an organization. If you're going to go work for a hospital, if you're going to go work for a small boutique hotel, if you're going to go work for a virtual job, and part of your job is going to be doing translations for crisis management, that you're going to understand the context of what you're translating because you have been there and done that. So make sure that you have those unique skills, not just transferable skills, unique skills buttoned up. Another one is language proficiency. So even if you're not even if the language is not relevant to, somebody has mentioned how they speak German. Like, German's not a language that is very, very widely used or known, but you being able to say that I understand, I have dealt with conflict, I've communicated in a core basis with guests that needed help. My husband speaks very basic Japanese, and he had the opportunity to work with the head of on board a ship that he used to work for Disney. He got to work with the head of Disney Japan, their kids. That's a cool story. That's a cool thing. And so think back to those stories and what are those unique situations that you have got to deal with. I had to, at one point in my career on ships, I got to deal with a guest that she was blind. And she came with her seeing eye dog on board. And so I got to tour her around the ship and teach her all of the different locations around. And that's a really cool, engaging story that somebody can connect to. So start digging through your archives of those unique things and bring people into the story with you. And then cultural competence. I think we talked about cultural competence, but these are just some examples: etiquette, international etiquette, crisis management, language proficiency, cultural competence, is that really illustrate to potential employers on how you can add value to their industry, and you can see things from a different perspective if they have an international or if they have diverse clientele. So I even look in, some of these areas in Australia or in South Africa or in Macau, in hotels in Macau, that maybe you might have an Aborigine population. You might have I can't remember what it's called in South Africa. It's not Aborigine. It's what's the difference in the two races? I can't remember what it's called. There's a word for it. But basically, when you have two different types of cultures that are mixing within one country or within one hospital or within one hotel, or that's why I use Macau or Macau is one of the examples, is that you have all these nationalities that are coming in, and you might overlook the fact that you've already had the experience of dealing with that type of mixing of individuals. And so make sure to bring that to go, oh, mixing of cultures, mixing of perspectives, mixing of, religions, of belief systems, of histories, it's not an issue for me. And these are the reasons why. And then really, really real life success stories is that make sure that when you're telling your stories, and again, I don't know if it's that as crew members that you're exposed to so much, but a crew member very, very quickly can tell you a story and not realize that the story is actually a negative story. Like they'll tell you a story about a really cranky guest or something, and then that's it. And that's not the right story to be telling to a potential employer. You have to make sure that you're crafting the story in a way that brings it full circle, so that you're saying, hey, this is how this really crappy situation in my career taught me and made me stronger as a potential hire for you, right? So this is how me being on that kiss, bow, or shake hands. Ooh, what's that? That looks like a great book. You're on mute.
Yes, it's actually a great book that I was introduced to when I first started working on ships, even though it's sales and marketing, but it really just opens up your world as to how you can interact with different people from different cultures. And you can even take it beyond, sales, and you can bring it into just general interactions with people from different cultures. So it's really a great book.
Yeah, that's great. Everybody take a look at that book. I'm going to listen or read it. That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, it really truly, and you guys know, you build this resilience being on board a ship of you're almost unoffendable. Like it's really hard to get offended on board a ship as you would on land. So if you're in this little bubble of an office or a workplace and somebody says something rude to you, then you're like, okay, what did that mean? And you start looking into it and trying to evaluate. When you're on board a ship, because of the pace and because of the diversity and because of the culture, when somebody screams at you, you're like, all right, I got it. And you keep moving. When you're on land, you seem to take things a little bit more seriously. I see that at least. And I mean, the situations that I've had to deal with in my leadership skills where it's like somebody said something to me with a tone and it was rude. And I'm like, girl, let me put you in a ship for 2 weeks. Then you're going to, within your first 22 hours or 24 hours, somebody's going to say something to you that's going to come off as rude. You build this thick skin, you build this resilience because you have to forgive people. You have to, and you become unoffendable. So when you have a manager that culturally, they're a little bit stronger in their communication style. I think of a Greek hotel director that I know very closely, that his communication style was very loud and very abrupt and very, he had no bad intentions to how, it was just his style, but you can't get offended by it. And you have this, so being able to tell those stories of those people, just saying, hey, generally because of shifts, I'm unoffendable. Like, it's really hard to hurt my feelings when you provide me feedback. And let me give you 3 examples of times when I've been given feedback. And it was difficult to take it, but once you get that feedback constantly by, shouting Greek people, then all of a sudden you have this resilience that is uncomparable. And so if that employer is dealing with, a culture within their company that's really sensitive and people are having to be babied, then they're like, please join. When can you start? So start thinking about those into full circle stories that can leverage why what you grew up in on ships is special. And then the next is, any questions on that about showcasing unique skills? No? Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about, go ahead. Anybody? No? Christian?
Another super easy one that it's almost a given, but it's a strong one. Crew members are always on time. Always. Timeliness, timekeeping is just, it's clockwork because it's a hotel built on a ship, and we go by marine life and we go by the captain's clock, and everything is, we're like always on time, and it doesn't ever happen usually never happens on land.
Yeah, that's a great point. That was a great point. And you worked in kids activities, I worked in guest activities, and think about in the spa, like, you can't be 5 minutes late to the appointment. Sorry. You can't be 5 minutes late to the activity because you have, the consequences are pretty real. You have
can't be on
immediately
time. You have to be there minutes
early
before so that you can prep. Yeah.
That's a great example. I hadn't thought of that one in a while, but yeah, you have to be on time. You have to be prepared. You have to, you imagine, it just creates this almost military style within you, this maritime style that you're early, and nobody has to say, oh, we're on time because, it's part of our culture. You just know you get looked at the wrong way or you get the consequence of it and you're never late again. So it's a really beautiful skill to have. So
and
go
we
ahead,
can get
Christian.
ready in 5 minutes.
Oh yeah.
We might not shower, but we can get ready in 5 minutes.
No, I could shower, change into formal wear, and eat dinner within 30 minutes across a ship that big, You just
100%.
and this is where you can go into appreciation of ships taught you, pushed you to this level that's superhuman. That you're like, if you had been told that, if you tell any employee on land today that, they would be like, oh, that's impossible. And on a ship, you just don't even question it because there's no other alternative and everybody else is doing it. So you're like, all right, I'll just conform. I'll just do what everybody else is doing. Nobody else is complaining about getting 30 minutes to eat and shower and change. But yeah, that's great. That's a great example. So the next one, so this is really about unique skills, communicating unique skills and special unique stories that make you stand out from other candidates. And I would also encourage you guys is that we've been following this. I'll send it out to you guys, but there was a guy that's doing a lot of research that's about video, about the impact of video. So if you're actively looking for employment, I would encourage you guys, and I know that we've talked about practicing these stories for your interviews, writing them down, is that as we're talking through this and you're thinking of, oh yeah, I remember that time, I remember that story, I remember that situation, I would encourage you guys to write all of those down, and you're going to practice them in the mirror in preparation for your interviews. But I would also encourage you to utilize them in any of your social media. So your LinkedIn primarily, if you have really good ship stories that demonstrate your etiquette with different nationalities, your ability to show up on time, your ability to deal with conflict or crisis, is put that into I wouldn't do more than 90 seconds, a 90-second clip that say, hey, let me tell you a little bit about a very unique crisis management situation. When I worked on board ships, one of the jobs that I had, I was in charge of, if there was a death on board, people are going to listen to that. They're going to go, what? You did what? You're going to get comments, you're going to get shares, you're going to get engagements, and you're going to get validity to the complexity of your skill sets. And remember, potential employers, they are all looking at your LinkedIn. They are all looking at it. So make sure that the content that you have on there is giving you credibility and people are going to click through and get to know you before they even start. So this thing that we were just listening to was talking about how in the sales cycle, when you're trying to sell somebody something, is that if you add a video into it, you're seeing about a 45% uptick in sales by just using video. I mean, most companies would be thrilled to get a 5% increase in their sales. But to think you are selling yourself, you have the ability to not sit and get frustrated and wait for the interview, but to put content out there. And if you're nervous in filming yourself, if you're nervous talking on camera, practice, practice, practice. Get a friend that maybe will ask you the question, and the camera can be on the side, and just say, okay, Christian, will you ask me this series of questions? And then Christian can just say, hey, tell me about a time when you dealt with conflict on board a cruise ship. You say, oh, let me tell you this great story. And then you talk into the story, and then later on you're editing that into clips that you can use on your social media. Okay. So this perfectly transitions into my next point, is crafting a powerful personal brand. So we have an entire webinar where we talk about this, about creating a personal brand for yourself, but really, really, truly creating a brand of who you are based on your experience, based on how you communicate. Do not try and be anybody else. Just try and be you. And go, what are the things that are my superpowers? Like for me, I'm funny. I think generally I have a decent sense of humor. I'm a very clear and direct communicator, so I get straight to the point with people. I'm empathetic. So I want to make sure that if these are kind of the 3 or 4 pillars to my brand, and I'm a freaking hard worker. So if these are the pillars to my brand, I'm going to make sure that I know and I understand those pillars, and anything that I'm putting onto my social media, and I would really say LinkedIn is our focus right now. Anything I'm putting onto LinkedIn are connected to those things. And that's the type of employer that I'm looking for, that value these different types of things. So make sure that you're leveraging your ship experience to feed into what that narrative of who you are. So I'm a hard worker. When I think about my ship experience, I go exactly to what we talked about last time, is, hey, I worked on board a cruise ship. Not sure if you're familiar with what working on board a cruise ship is like, but you are working 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, 70 hours a week for 6 to 7 months straight with no days off. Period. End of sentence. That's it. That's validity, that I'm a hard worker. Like, there's no question. And then 15 questions come related to that. You could just post a video on your social media like that hey, one of the pillars of who I am as Wilhelmina is that I'm an incredibly hard worker. And the proof of that is that I worked on board a cruise ship. Let me tell you what working on board a cruise ship is like. Boom, boom, boom. And that's a 15-second video that you can post and get people's interest in you. And then really, truly is making sure that on your LinkedIn, the sharing of video, the sharing of posts that are relevant. And Mapule, go ahead.
No, you can finish that first, and then I've
Okay.
got a remark.
Okay. So really, truly, it's utilizing video, identifying what your pillars are, utilizing video to communicate those pillars, but connecting that video or those posts, even if they're posts that you get from ChatGPT, to your experience on board a ship. All right. And then connecting them to stories that only can be your stories. I think that is critically important. So just remember that you're in your communication. Remember, like I said in the beginning, a lot of crew members tend to spin stories in a negative way, is that make sure that you're spinning the story, the video, whatever you're communicating, so that it piques people's interest. And it also makes you look like Superman or Superwoman. Is it go, wow, I didn't know that about you. And I have a friend, one of my best friends, is like, when we're sitting at a cocktail party, she's like, will you just tell some of the people some of the stories about you working on a cruise ship? And everybody's like this. But I have to make sure that I spin it in a way that shows like I'm badass. I did this, I did that, I dealt with this, I dealt with that, and I'm grateful for the resilience. I'm grateful for that. But you guys need to go through that exercise for yourself and then layer that onto your personal brand. And please make sure if you have not, if you would not feel great with me pulling up your LinkedIn right now in front of everybody, then listen to our LinkedIn webinar. I think we did 2 of them, if I'm not mistaken, and do some of those tweaks and then send it to us. If you do apply at ship2shoreemployee.com, that goes to the whole group of us, and just say, hey, could you guys take a look at my LinkedIn so we can give you some feedback? And I would definitely challenge you guys to figure out what those pillars are and then figure out what are the stories related to those pillars. Okay. But really, really, truly, that when you looked at LinkedIn, your personal brand, what is actually gaining traction is when there's authenticity in it. When you're telling a story of when you were homesick, when you're telling a story of you dealt with a really difficult situation, because everybody can emotionally connect and say, oh, I felt like a failure once. Oh, I felt like I wasn't going to pass that training. Oh, I had somebody scream at me once. Is that you being able to tell the story and how it gave you resilience, how it made you stronger, how it made you a valuable employee. That is so, so, so helpful for engagement from individuals, because people, LinkedIn, unfortunately today, there's a lot of fluff on it. There's a lot of fluffy articles. There's a lot of, hey, I'm so great posts. I'm so intelligent posts. And the stuff that's actually getting engagement is authenticity. So that actually makes it easy for you, because all you got to do is be yourself. You don't have to be this fake professional person. You just have to be you and present your pillars in a really good, well said way. And tag us in your posts or tag us in the comments of your posts, and we'll watch them and provide you any feedback. And then next is networking and industry connections. So first point was showcasing unique skills related to the industry. Next one was creating a personal, powerful brand, so that you're looking at what are your pillars, what are the values, and how you layer your unique skill sets on this. And then lastly is taking that, putting it onto a rocket ship and shooting it into the sky. So your networking and your industry connections. So really, truly is tapping into all of those networks that are anything cruise related and commenting, engaging, reading everything that that person is doing. So, for example, is looking at a new brand that has, well, actually this morning on LinkedIn, Virgin Voyages got labeled as the top cruise line by Condé Nast Traveler, which that's a really big deal for a cruise line to be named as new of a cruise line as them. So when it came out about, I think it said 10 hours ago, the article came out 10 hours ago. And because I'm following Virgin, and I think because I'm following Virgin or because somebody reposted it, I saw it. And so I immediately take the post and I'm going to congratulate and comment on the post for the people that I know that work at Virgin. Say, congratulations, Frank. Congratulations, Jessica. This is a huge achievement for you and all of your crew. So A, congratulating them, but then B, sharing it. So being somebody that's going, oh my gosh, this is so great for Virgin, because I really, truly, and genuinely excited for them. I sailed on it. It's a great cruise line. So looking at all of those brands, because then that's giving visibility to you. And if it's a Virgin post, another post that just came out yesterday was Royal Caribbean Celebrity Ascent is coming out in the next couple weeks. And so they did a big activation in their headquarters. And so I immediately tagged the president, tagged some of the people. Congratulations, this is so exciting, da 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 da. And there's, I think it's Gary Vanderchuck. He's a great guy to follow. There's someone else who talks about it. It's not Gary, though. It's someone else that talks about how if there's somebody that they want to meet, or if there's somebody that is influential in the world, let's say in your country, in St. Vincent, in ahead of a hotel, ahead of an association, ahead of something, go in and comment on those people's posts. That's all you got to do. So the next time you figure out that they're attending an event and you say, hi, I'm Barbara Kobas, they know exactly who you are. They know you're that person that constantly is encouraging and commenting on their posts. And you would be shocked. It's not about likes. It's not about shares. It's about engagement. Are you sharing and encouraging other people? Because if you think on a post, it's rare, you're personal, if you get 3 comments on something. But if you have somebody that's consistently engaging and sharing and contributing, then you remember that person, because that's the way of connecting today in the professional world. And it's so much better than emailing their secretary to try and get a meeting, because you are getting their attention in a very subtle and genuine way that makes sure that they know that you care about what they're writing and you're reading it. So make sure to follow all of those people and engage. And then industry, like your online network platforms. So you're going to have the brands that you want to follow. So you should be following every single cruise line if you want to stay within the industry. If you want to move into hotels, if you want to move into hospitals, if you want to move into restaurants, you need to be following all of their pages in your local country. Then the next one is any associations. So I'm part of Women's Presidents Organization, Seatrade, which is a cruise group, CLIA, which is another cruise group. There are so many within your local country. There are, just cruise, tourism, travel associations. You can join any group on LinkedIn. So just go and look, South Africa Travel Association, South Africa Cruise, and you'll see all the groups, and start going in there, because there's business owners, there's transportation companies, there's food suppliers, there's all these people that you will add tremendous value if you get employment with them. And as you start commenting and engaging, then all of a sudden and literally your comments and your engagements, if you block 10 minutes in your schedule, 10 minutes, that's all it takes a day to go in and make 5 to 10 genuine, read the post, understand what they're talking about, share, comment, that you will see a massive difference, not only in your following, but also in your genuine connections with people. And then when you ping them, when you cold call them, when you're trying to reach out to them, you will get something back in return. And actually, there's a lady from Carnival that I'm trying to get a hold of, and girlfriend will not respond to me. I'm trying so hard, man. But today I'm going to send her a video. I'm going to send her a video that is like to her, that just says, hey, I know you've been busy, da, 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 da. And that is so much better than following up, checking in. Did you see my message? So today, that's my strategy. So I would just encourage you guys to make sure that you're using all of those networks to then leverage traffic to your personal. So really, truly, in summary, unique skills, personal branding, networking. If you guys can master those three and utilize social media, boom, you're taking off. And also you make our lives much easier when we get a job that looks like a perfect fit for you, that when people go in and check in on you on LinkedIn, that they see that you look wonderful.